Hey everyone, Moms Against Medical Bullying. So I just wanted to share a little bit today about what I've been reading. First off, I joined the National Liberty Alliance. Have any of you ever checked out their website or joined their website? I'm currently taking their little civics course, which has been, pretty enlightening in many ways. I'm learning a lot and I'm taking a lot of notes. What I find interesting, one of the things I find interesting about what I'm learning through their perspective on civics is that the founders, right, and the philosophers who mingled with the founders on their ideologies and thoughts and what's right and wrong, apparently they had a strong sense of God. Basically what they said is that specifically John Locke was that someone who has a sense of God is someone who's operating in right reasoning. And I found that funny because nowadays I feel that the government, and bureaucrats try to turn that around and say that if you do have a perspective of God, or if you do believe in God, that you're not operating in sound reasoning, as where these men concluded that John Locke concluded that if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, that you don't believe that a higher divine entity created the world, that you're not operating in the reasoning that you were given. Basically, that you're not in reality. Because this mouse here, oh, sorry, my phone fell. This mouse didn't come out of nothing. Someone made this mouse, engineered it, put it together. It did not come out of nothing. So they philosophize that someone who acknowledges God as divine creator is a person who is rational and a person who is operating in sound reason. So yeah, just very interesting stuff about the foundations of the freedom of religion and everything. And what I think that they were shooting for, according to the information I'm being given through the civics course, is that they weren't shooting for to say one specific religion. They wanted freedom of religion because they wanted religion here. They just wanted people to they thought that any religion, they found what was the common denominator between all these major religions, and said, yeah, let's do that, because the fact of the matter is we want people to have religion, because we feel when people have religion within themselves, that they act better, that they do better, that they have a conscience about things, right? So yeah, I don't feel that they promoted one specific religion. Did they preach Jesus? Did they preach Christ and him crucified? I don't think specifically, no, according to what I'm learning so far, but they wanted people to have that sense of God, and that God created all things, and that God put certain laws and principles, the laws of nature, into place. Natural laws, right? Natural law is God's law, and that's apparently where the Constitution was birthed from, that place and that understanding. So yeah, I just think it's super interesting, because today it's the opposite, and I can understand why the people didn't want things like atheism to take over, and evolution, which doesn't acknowledge God, for that not to be taught in schools or as a fact, because that would lead to children becoming adults who don't believe in God, and which would destroy the fabric of the society that they saw, that they wanted to be created. And then they give this one example of early on, like the first court case, Supreme Court case, not the first Supreme Court case, excuse me, but it was the first time where somebody, they asked them to say the oath, right? That you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth before God. But the person said they didn't believe in God, and the judge was shocked because that was like unheard of. It was like, you don't believe in God? Like, wow, that's not sound reasoning, like we can't even trust this person because they're not even willing to swear an oath to God. So yeah, but they liked the idea of religion because they felt that it held men accountable to something, and it held their behavior accountable, and that, most of these religions believe also in an afterlife, and you have to be good, do good, be good to be in a good place in that afterlife. So they depended on that to direct the principles and the actions of men. So they wanted that freedom of religion. They wanted all religion. And they didn't want the government to, specify or promote a specific religion. At least that's what I'm understanding so far. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of like the perspective that I'm learning. So yeah, let's see. I wrote here in my notes that the founding fathers agreed with Locke. And it's so funny because in college, I took intro to philosophy, and I learned about John Locke, and I learned about Descartes and some of these other philosophers. But for some reason, I found it completely boring in the class, and the philosophy book was like this thick, and it was drudgery. But I don't know. Now I find it fascinating. But yeah. So the fundamental premise underlying all self-evident truth is rooted in presupposition of a divine creator. These are some notes I took from the lessons that I'm taking and learning from. I wrote down the foundation of society should be based on God's revealed law. These laws had a moral code, right from wrong. Yeah. So, but the funny thing is that, right, so we preach Christ. Christ has set us free from the law and the curse of the law. How? Because he when you believe on Jesus, you accept that he made us a new creation in Christ Jesus. You experienced a new birth. That's taking it farther. But I understand if this for sure was their perspective. Like, I understand what they were saying here, you know what I mean? And what they were doing. So let's see here. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the development, first of all, I'm coming to the realization that we pretty much do live in a Marxist society. I mean, it's not coming, it's here. The whole public, and it all comes under the name of safety. So Marxism and safety, hand in hand. Because with safety, you give up more liberty, right? That's the kind of like the battle that we're always in, trading liberties for safeties. So, and that's exactly the doctrine of vaccination and, and the masks and everything like that. The medical system is a Marxist system. So, yeah, medical system is Marxism. I mean, basically, that's the foundation of their ideologies is Marxism, because that's what they preach. That's the philosophy that they preach. Everyone has to take this vaccine in order to keep everyone else safe, blah, blah, blah. So therefore, everyone else has to give up their personal liberty to say no to something that goes inside their body for the greater good, right? This is the battle we're always in. And it's the same thing, like, okay, so, right, about the, let's take the traffic department. So basically, they say you have to have a license and a registration and all this because they have to keep and maintain control, right, for public safety. Like, it all comes down to safety and control. We've traded it all in, you know, we've traded in our liberties and in order for the safety and control for the government to keep us safe. But the government was supposed to safeguard. What the government was supposed to do was safeguard our inalienable rights. Let's see here. It says in the first page of the Declaration that that to secure these rights, what rights? Okay, so let's read from the truth. We've all heard this before, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So governments are instituted to secure, make safe these rights given to us by our Creator. So, hold on one second here. Okay, continuing on. I had to fix my lighting. So to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, so far we learned that the government is instituted to secure our rights that are given to us by God, and secondly, that they derive their power from us. They derive their powers from the consent of the governed. So we are who they get their power from. We are who they get their power from. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive in these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, okay? And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form, so as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay. Then they go on to say that yes, we should not change the government for light and transient causes, but likely that this does not really happen because human beings have the habit of kind of like becoming slaves, you know? We have the habit of suffering while evils are sufferable is the wording, rather than to right ourselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So we'd rather stay. This is a great example. The children of Israel in Egypt, right? Like they were like, Moses, why are you taking us out of the comfort of our slavery? We would rather be in our slavery. We would rather suffer these evils than to right ourselves by abolishing the forms to which we are accustomed. We're used to this lifestyle. Like, you know, we get fed. We're good. Like, we don't want freedom. Your freedom is scary. You know what I mean? We don't want to come out into that place of the unknown with God, you know? So I think that's a really good example of people we would rather stay in our slavery. I mean, obviously, as you can see today, many people, or the majority, seem to want to stay in their slavery to the governors by wearing their masks and following those orders, than to say, you know what? No. We're not, you know, you're out of your place. The government right now is totally out of their place. They are out of their bounds. So they were supposed to secure our liberties, not make our liberties safe, you know, safeguard our liberties. They weren't created to safeguard us, right? They're supposed to safeguard our right to carry weapons, you know, carry the guns, secure our right for freedom of religion. They're not supposed to keep us safe. They're not supposed to say, hey, give me your guns and I'll keep you safe. No. That wasn't the deal. The deal was that the government is instituted to keep our liberties and our right to have our own guns. So anyways, so let's see here. So yeah, basically what I want to end on is that the medical system and vaccination is based in Marxism. And basically the public health department is like a Marxist department. And I just want to read some quotes here. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Where I'm reading from is I printed this this document from the website beatthecourt.com. It says JR and Jackie from beatthecourt.com. So this is, actually, I printed this off their website. But this is what I'm reading from is the handbook for jurors. That's what I'm reading. Okay. So it says here, the 10 Commandments represent God's government over man. God commands us for our own good to give up wrongs and not rights. His system always results in liberty and freedom. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights are built on this foundation, which provides for punitive justice. It is not until one damages another's person or property that he can be punished. The Marxist system leads to bondage, and God's system leads to liberty. Read very carefully, and then they list the 10 Commandments. So yeah. And then they have here a summary of the Communist Manifesto, which is another document that I looked at. And I was like, oh, maybe I should read this. And anyways, so many things to read, right? It says the Communist Manifesto represents a misguided philosophy which teaches the citizens to give up their rights for the sake of the common good. But it always ends in a police state. This is called preventative justice. Control is the key concept. Read carefully. And then they have this summary of abolition of private property, heavy progressive income tax, abolition to all rights of inheritance, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels, a central bank, government control of communications and transportation, government ownership of factories and agriculture, government control of labor, corporate farms, regional planning, free education for all children, and government-controlled schools, right? So, and the one about the children and free public schools is the key right there, because when you teach children, right, they're going to grow up to be adults who hold these ideologies to be true. So, there was something else I wanted to say about, I was going through Carl Miller's section on property taxes, and no, I don't understand it all. I'm like a baby in this stuff, and by the grace of God, hopefully I can grow in this knowledge, God willing, because I definitely need God to help me understand all this information. Okay. So it says here, when the people fear the government... Okay, hold on a second, because I was talking about taxes. Okay, rewind. So yeah, with taxes, supposedly, and I can't shoot off the court cases and all that stuff right now, but, okay, so the money that we have is called Federal Reserve notes, right? Probably a lot of people who stay this long to watch this video, you probably know that already, right? That's like a basic thing to know, that the money is a Federal Reserve note. So correct me if I'm wrong, but to me that seems like money is the promise. Like it's a promise that you can cash in for your gold. And apparently that you're not supposed to pay the government in treasury notes. And also that, you know, in the Constitution it says, you know what, let me find the exact place. You're not supposed to pay off debts to the government in treasury notes. I think it's Article 2. And supposedly the states that went off the silver and gold standard were not allowed to tax people. So basically, yeah, because people can't pay you in Federal Reserve notes. Okay, it's Article 1, Section 10 says no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. So yeah. I really want to learn more about the property tax thing, because I do think it's wrong that if you pay for a property that you should have to continue paying for it. Yeah. All right, so moving on. When the people fear the government, you have tyranny. When the government fears the people, you have liberty. Politicians, bureaucrats, and especially judges would have you believe that too much freedom will result in chaos. Therefore, we should gladly give up some rights for the good of the community. In other words, people acting in the name of government say we need more laws and more jurors to enforce these laws, even if we have to give up some more rights in the process. They believe the more laws we have, the more control, thus a better society. This theory may sound good on paper, and apparently many of our leaders think this way, as evidenced by the thousands of new laws that are added to the books each year in this country. But no matter how cleverly this Marxist argument is made, the hard fact is that whenever you give up a right, you lose free choice. This adds another control. Control's real name is bondage. The logical conclusion would be, if giving up some rights produces a better society, then by giving up all rights, we could produce the perfect society. We could chain everybody to a tree for lack of trust. This may prevent crime, but it would destroy privacy, which is the heartbeat of freedom. It would also destroy trust, which is the foundation for dignity. Rather than giving up rights, we should be giving up wrongs. The opposite of control is not chaos. The more laws do not make less criminals. We must give up wrongs, not rights, for a better society. William Penn of the British House of Commons once proclaimed, necessity is the plea for every infringement of human liberty. It is the argument of tyrants, and it's the creed of slaves. So necessity is the plea for every infringement of human liberty, right? Necessity. Oh, we have to do this. Oh, it's an emergency. Oh, everyone has to do this in order for everyone to be safe, right? It's the basis plea for every infringement on human liberty. Couldn't have said it any better. So yeah, inalienable, unalienable, or natural rights. Natural rights are those rights such as life from conception, liberty and the pursuit of happiness, freedom of religion, speech, learning, travel, self-defense. Hence, laws and statutes which violate natural rights, though they have the color of law, are not law but impostors. The U.S. Constitution was written to protect these natural rights from being tampered with by legislatures. Further, our fathers also wisely knew that the Constitution would be utterly worthless to restrain government legislatures unless it was clearly understood that the people had the right to compel the government to keep within constitutional limits. In a jury trial, the real judges are the jurors. Surprisingly, judges are actually just referees bound by the Constitution. So, yeah. I'm just gonna end it there. And just to conclude, my opinion is that the medical system and the public health system that we have in place today is a Marxist system. And it's just another way of controlling people and destroying people's liberties and rights to make decisions and sound decisions for themselves.